My stepmom secretly paid a classmate to emotionally break me, so I made her life fall apart in public. You know those kids who disappear into their hoodie the second they step into school? That was me. Lucas Foster, 15. New student at Redfield Prep, trying to stay under the radar after moving from everything I'd ever known. I didn't want attention. Not after what happened. Not after losing my mom and being shoved into a house that didn't want me. Especially not when the woman in that house had already decided I was a project. Something to fix. Or worse, something to punish into usefulness. After my mom passed, my dad, Greg, didn't really ask if I wanted to move in with him and his new wife, Cynthia. It was just decided. Lucas will live with us now. It's the right thing. Right for whom, exactly? Certainly not for me. Cynthia made that clear within the first week. The fake smiles. The way she rearranged my suitcase like it offended her. The comments about how boys need to be tough and how he's too sensitive for his own good. She'd say things like that while pouring almond milk into her steel-cut oats like she was reading out loud from a parenting manual no one asked for. Greg wasn't much help. He worked long hours at some finance firm and let Cynthia run the house. Which meant I learned quickly, silence was safer than questions. Politeness was expected, but never reciprocated. And any emotion outside of a nod or shrug was considered drama. I kept my head down, did the dishes, took out the trash, folded my laundry. But apparently none of it mattered. Because 2 weeks into the school year, Cynthia set me down at the kitchen island with a glass of vitamin water and said, "You're making it really hard to love you." I blinked. She said it so casually, like she was commenting on the weather. "You don't push back," she continued. "You don't assert yourself. You let people walk on you. That's weak, Lucas. I don't want to raise someone weak." Raise me? She wasn't raising me. She was tolerating me. Barely. I didn't say anything. What could I say? I was 15, grieving, living in a stranger's guest room. And apparently, now I was too soft to be loved. Redfield Prep wasn't any better. You'd think a private school with a polished campus and fleece-uniformed staff would have some level of discipline. Nope. Kids are cruel no matter how much tuition their parents pay. Especially Mason. Tall, sharp jaw, perfect hair. The kind of guy teachers loved and other kids feared. He started small, tapping my shoulder in the hallway just to laugh when I turned. Leaving notes in my locker that said things like, "Foster equals faint heart," or "mommy issues." I tried to ignore it. I really did. But every day felt heavier. Not just because of school. Because of home. Because I could feel myself disappearing and no one seemed to notice. Then one day, Mason escalated. During lunch, he walked past my table and dropped his tray on me. Mashed potatoes. Gravy. On my hoodie. My lap. He smiled and said, "Oops. Reflex test." Everyone laughed. Even the teachers didn't say anything. I stood up, humiliated, and started to walk to the restroom. That's when he said it. "Bet your stepmom doesn't even pretend to like you." It hit like a slap. Because, how would he even know about Cynthia? No one knew me here. No one knew my family. But the thing that really haunted me? When I got home that day, Cynthia was smiling. Like she was proud of something I hadn't done yet. Like a storm was about to hit. And she already had her umbrella. That night, I overheard her on the phone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. She was in the kitchen. I was walking to get water. She was laughing. This soft, whispery laugh she only used when Greg wasn't around. No, he didn't cry. But he's definitely cracking. It's working. Silence. Then, yeah, transfer the next quick pay tonight. Same as last time. I froze. Quick pay. That was how I used to pay for digital textbooks back home. I recognized the app name. She was paying someone. And someone was cracking. I backed up slowly and went in my room. Heart racing. Mind spinning. And for the first time, I asked myself the question I hadn't dared to until now. Was this more than just bad luck? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed up searching her tablet. She was careless with passwords. I'd watched her type it in a dozen times, the name of her favorite yoga instructor. It worked. I opened her QuickPay account, and my stomach dropped. There it was. Multiple payments. All to a name I recognized from school. Mason Taylor. Dates lined up with the first notes in my locker. The spilled tray. The constant harassment. Cynthia wasn't just tolerating the bullying. She was orchestrating it. I stared at the screen for a long time. The kind of long that makes your face go numb. Because it's one thing to feel unloved. It's another thing to learn that someone paid for you to be broken. I didn't know how long I stared at the screen. 5 minutes? 15? All I know is that I kept rereading Mason's name, each payment log like a punch to the chest. $60. $80. One for $150, labeled bonus. All paid through QuickPay from Cynthia's account. No message on most of them. But the largest one had a note for the library thing. Good work. The library thing? I sat back, trying to remember. That week, Mason had walked up behind me during study period and whispered, "Should have been your mom." Then he laughed, real low, and walked away like nothing happened. I told myself it was just him being cruel. Now I knew better. This wasn't just harassment. It was a system. Organized. Planned. Funded. And suddenly, every look, every smirk, every silent dinner at home felt different. It wasn't passive neglect. It was a strategy. Cynthia wasn't just trying to toughen me up. She was actively trying to break me. I think she wanted to prove something. To herself, to Greg, maybe even to the world. That I wasn't strong enough. That I couldn't survive under pressure. And that would give her the perfect excuse to say, "See? I told you he was too soft." I copied everything. Screenshots. Transaction histories. I uploaded it all to a hidden Google Drive folder and emailed myself the link. Then I logged out of her account and slipped the tablet back where I found it. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit on them to stop myself from clicking more. I didn't sleep that night. But for the first time in weeks, I wasn't scared. I was angry. Focused. I had proof. The next day at school, Mason acted normal. Too normal. Smiling. Winking in class. Even saying, "Hey, Foster," like we were old friends. Like nothing ever happened. Like he hadn't been paid to destroy me from the inside out. And maybe that was the worst part. That to him, this wasn't personal. It was just business. I started collecting everything. Printed notes from my locker. Audio recordings from the hallway, captured with a voice memo app, one left running in my hoodie pocket. One day he shoved me against a locker. I didn't react. But the mic picked it up. "You're lucky Cynthia thinks this is enough. I could do worse, you know." I clipped that section and labeled it in the folder. Direct threat plus name drop. The more I collected, the clearer it became. This wasn't just Cynthia's cruelty or Mason's ego. It was collusion. 2 weeks later, I got called into the counselor's office. "Ms. Brindle." Always wore mismatched earrings and smelled like lavender. She didn't beat around the bush. "Lucas, your stepmother called. She says you've been acting withdrawn. Secretive. She's worried." I almost laughed. Of course she was worried. I was building a case. I shrugged. "I'm fine. Just school stuff." She tilted her head. She also mentioned some problems at home. "I'm staying quiet to avoid problems." "Lucas, if there's something, it's fine." She stared at me for a second too long. Then nodded. "You let me know if that changes, okay?" I stood to leave. What if it already did? I didn't mean to say it. But I think part of me wanted to crack the door open. See if anyone on the outside could recognize what was happening without me having to scream it. She didn't ask questions. Just gave me a hall pass and sent me back to class. Back home, Cynthia was waiting. Dinner on the table. Salmon. Steamed broccoli. Lemon water. She smiled. "I spoke to your school counselor today." I didn't answer. "I hope you didn't say anything dramatic." I stared at her. "Why would I need to?" She sipped her water. "Because you've always had a flair for making people feel sorry for you. Or maybe people just don't like watching a kid get humiliated." She smiled wider. "You're learning to speak up." "Good. Maybe I learned it from Mason." Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. Then she laughed, that low, fake laugh she saved for when she was cornered. "I don't know what you think you know, Lucas, but let me give you a word of advice." She leaned closer. "No one believes boys like you." I stared at her. At the woman who took me in not to love me, but to prove a point. I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to. That night, I created a fake Instagram account. Local gossip accounts were everything at Redfield Prep. There was one called Whispers NC, a private page that posted drama, rumors, screenshots, photos, confessions. I messaged the admin, "I have something real, not rumors. Proof. Want it?" They responded 10 minutes later. "If it's legit, send it." I uploaded the screenshots. The quick pay logs. The audio clip. The Mason quotes. Everything. I didn't sign my name. But I signed my intent. You think you know who runs the school. You don't. She's not a teacher. She's not a student. But she's pulling strings. And it's time people knew. The post went up the next morning. Anonymous submission. No caption. Just the files. No one knew it was me. Not yet. But by third period, whispers were spreading. And Mason? He looked pale. By lunch, he was nowhere to be found. And Cynthia? She called the school. Demanded the post be taken down. Claimed it was digital vandalism. But it was too late. The truth was out. By the end of that week, Whispers NC had over 300 comments under the post. Some were fake, classmates joking around, making it about gossip or meme fodder. But others? Others were angry. Focused. People were paying attention. And not just students. Teachers, coaches, volunteers, even some parents, apparently, had been added to the account just to see what was unfolding. The screenshots, the payment trail, the voice recordings. Cynthia didn't just look bad. She looked dangerous. And Mason? He looked bought. But here's the thing no one tells you about being the one who finally speaks up. The second you do, everyone watches. But not everyone sides with you. Some wait to see if you'll survive. Some hope you won't. The day after the post went up, Mason came back to school. He didn't say anything in class. Didn't look at me once. But during last period, he slipped a note into my locker. No envelope. Just folded paper. Inside, one sentence. You made a mistake. I stared at it like it might explode in my hands. Because yeah, I'd made a lot of mistakes. But telling the truth wasn't one of them. At home, things got worse. Cynthia wasn't smiling anymore. She wasn't talking, either. Just watching me with the sharp, calculating stare, like she was doing the math on what it would take to bury this whole thing before it took her down. Greg barely spoke. He'd been looped in when the school called to let him know there were rumors about Cynthia's conduct circulating. He confronted her the night after the post went live. I listened from the hallway. Is it true? You're going to take the word of a traumatized child over your wife? He's your stepson, Cynthia. He's living in our house. And he's clearly projecting. He's never adjusted. You said so yourself. Silence. Don't twist my words. She didn't shout. She never did. But somehow her quiet was more terrifying than yelling. Because it wasn't silence from shame. It was silence from strategy. That weekend, I came home from a short walk to find my room ransacked. Drawers pulled open. Desk emptied. Laptop missing. I ran down the hall. Cynthia stood in the kitchen, calm as ever, wiping down the counter. Where's my computer? You mean the one you used to slander people online? That's not slander. It's evidence. She looked at me, slow and deliberate. I told your father you're not well. I told the internet you're a sociopath. Her eyes flashed, just briefly. Careful. You're not the only one with things to lose. I told Greg what happened. He sighed, rubbed his temples, said he'd look into it, which meant he'd do nothing. Because to him, Cynthia was the person who made sure the bills were paid, the dinners were cooked, the house stayed polished. To him, I was a disruption, even if he never said it out loud. On Monday, I went to the school counselor. I showed her the original folder, the one I'd sent to Whispers and See. This time, I added screenshots of the text from Mason, the note in my locker, and a summary of what had happened at home. She stared at the files, read every word, then said, "Lucas, I believe you." And I almost cried, because it was the first time since all of this started that someone said those words out loud. But belief doesn't equal action. Not yet. She filed a report, said she'd talk to the principal, said they'd review protocols, which meant, again, wait. That afternoon, Mason cornered me in the bathroom. He didn't hit me, didn't yell, just stood in front of the door and said, "You think you're safe because you hid behind an anonymous post?" "I'm not hiding," I said. "You should have kept your mouth shut. So should Cynthia." He didn't reply, just walked out. But as he left, he said something under his breath. "She promised me you wouldn't last a semester." That's when it clicked. This wasn't some quick con Cynthia cooked up overnight. She'd been planning it, recruiting him before I even set foot on campus, feeding him stories, shaping the narrative. She wasn't just breaking me. She was building a version of me the world would hate. So if I ever cracked, if I ever broke down, people wouldn't be surprised. They'd say, "Yeah, that kid was always weird, always dramatic." That night, I backed up everything, made multiple copies of the folder, printed the files, put them in an envelope labeled, "If anything happens to me," gave it to my friend Sam, the only person I trusted at school. Didn't tell him everything, just said, "If things go south, give this to the school board." He didn't ask questions, just nodded, because he saw what was happening too, and he knew silence wouldn't save me. The next morning, everything changed. Whispers and See posted again. Not me this time. Someone else. Anonymous. A picture of Mason, in the school library, receiving a wad of cash from a woman outside a car. The caption said, "Want to talk about contracts?" The image was grainy, but clear enough. The woman? Cynthia. You can only hide behind power for so long. Cynthia had money. She had connections, a spotless reputation, and a husband who'd rather keep peace than ask questions. But she underestimated one thing: what happens when you make the quiet one angry. After the new photo leaked, the one of her paying Mason behind the library, it took less than 48 hours for things to unravel. The image went viral. Whispers and See picked up thousands of new followers overnight. Local pages reposted it. Even the Redfield Journal mentioned it in a side column about allegations of misconduct involving a faculty spouse and students. It wasn't official. Not yet. But it was real. The whispers turned into full-on conversations. At school, I wasn't invisible anymore. People stopped me in the halls. Some asked what happened. Some just nodded like they were silently rooting for me. But a few, the ones who laughed when Mason poured food on me, who looked the other way when I walked out of class shaking, they stayed quiet. And that silence said everything. Then Cynthia struck back. Hard. Greg called me into the living room on Friday night. His face was pale, hands trembling. Lucas, sit down. We need to talk. Cynthia was already seated. Perfect posture. Legal pads on the coffee table. A tissue in her hand she didn't use. Your stepmother informed me that you've been spreading fabricated material about her online, posting doctored images, making baseless accusations. I blinked. It's not doctored. Lucas. Greg's voice cracked. This is serious. It is serious. That's why it's real. Cynthia sighed. I know you're hurting. Losing your mom, the transition, the stress. It's a lot for someone your age. She dabbed at her eye like she was auditioning for a soap opera. But lashing out like this? Turning strangers against your family? She pulled out a manila envelope. I've prepared a behavioral review form. We're scheduling a meeting with the school psychologist to get ahead of any more outbursts. Outbursts. That's what she called months of abuse, bullying, surveillance, gaslighting. I'm not crazy, I said. You paid him. I gave a student a donation for volunteering, she replied coolly. You chose to twist it into something else. I have voice recordings, screenshots. She didn't flinch. Audio can be manipulated, and anyone can Photoshop a payment app. Greg looked between us, lost, like a man trying to decide if he was watching a fight or a fire. You really think I faked all of this? I asked. Cynthia stood and walked toward me. Soft voice, gentle eyes. I think you need help. And there it was, the last card in her deck. If she couldn't silence me with fear, she'd try to erase me with doubt. She told the school I was unstable, told family friends I was acting out, posted a vague Facebook status about mental health struggles in the household and how support means sometimes speaking truth, even when it hurts. People flooded the comments with heart emojis and thinking of you messages, like she was the one being attacked, like I was just another unstable teenager throwing a tantrum. But some people didn't buy it. Ms. Brindle, the school counselor, called me in again. She looked tired, but resolved. We've opened a formal investigation. Into Cynthia? Into all of it. Mason's behavior. The money trail. Everything. Do you believe me? I do now. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a printout of the Whispers NC submissions. One of them had included screenshots of Cynthia texting Mason instructions, threats, payment agreements. We hadn't seen them before. They came from someone else. Another student. Mason had cracked, or someone close to him had. Either way, we weren't alone anymore. That night, I went into the guest room where I slept, the room I'd been shoved into after my mom's funeral. And I packed a bag. One duffel. Just essentials. Greg watched from the doorway. Where are you going? To a friend's. Temporarily. You can't just leave. Why not? You did. He didn't stop me. Didn't ask me to stay. Just stood there, frozen. Because he knew. He knew she wasn't innocent. He just didn't want to deal with it. I stayed with Sam's family that weekend. They gave me the pull-out couch and a key. Didn't ask questions. Didn't act like I was a problem. They made pancakes the next morning and asked if I liked blueberries or chocolate chips. I almost cried. Because it felt like the first time someone actually saw me as a kid and not a case. Monday morning, I walked into school and found a handwritten note in my locker. Different handwriting. Smaller. Cleaner. I'm sorry. I didn't know how far she'd take it. There was no name. But I knew who it was. The summons came on a Tuesday. A formal envelope from the Redfield Prep Disciplinary Committee, signed and sealed. You are requested to appear for an investigative hearing regarding recent events involving student misconduct, inappropriate adult interference, and claims of harassment and coercion tied to a faculty spouse. It didn't say names, but it didn't need to. Everyone knew who it was about. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. Not because I was nervous, because I was ready. I'd been silenced, humiliated, dismissed, gaslit, and blamed. I was done surviving in whispers. It was time to speak in volume. Sam's mom dropped me off at the front of the school. You don't have to prove anything, she said softly. The truth already knows its shape. I didn't respond, just nodded, clutching my folder of evidence like it was armor. Inside the gymnasium, they'd set up folding chairs in neat rows. Teachers on one side, school board members at the back. 3 empty chairs up front for me, Mason, and Cynthia. Mason arrived first. He looked rough, pale, sweaty, like a kid who hadn't slept in days. I expected him to avoid eye contact, but he didn't. He looked right at me and gave the smallest nod. Not an apology, not forgiveness, just recognition. Cynthia walked in like she owned the room. Beige heels, pearl earrings, hair twisted into a perfect bun. She even smiled at the board members like this was a charity gala she was hosting. My stomach turned, but I stayed seated, because if I stood too early, I might burn the whole place down with my words. The hearing began with a statement from the administration. This matter involves potential violations of student safety, adult boundary ethics, and the weaponization of influence for personal gain. They let Cynthia speak first. She played her part well, spoke softly. We're pain like perfume. I've always cared deeply about Lucas. I saw a boy in need of structure, love, guidance. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Any money I gave to Mason was for volunteer work, tutoring, helping Lucas socialize. Unfortunately, this was misinterpreted by a child struggling with grief and misplaced resentment. There it was again, that word, misinterpreted, like I was a poorly written email. Then Mason was called. He didn't say much at first, just confirmed the payments were real. Said Cynthia framed it like helping. But then the counselor asked him directly, were you told to target Lucas? To isolate him? Humiliate him? Mason hesitated, then nodded. Yes. A murmur ran through the room. And did you? I did. Why? Because I thought if I didn't, she'd ruin me. I was called last. I stood up slowly, folder in hand, walked to the front like the floor could collapse under me at any moment. But I didn't sit. I stood in the center of the room and opened the folder. One by one, I laid out the truth. Screenshots of payments, audio of threats, a copy of the anonymous message I received, Nicole's letter, handwritten, Cynthia's text to Mason. Then I looked up at the room, and I spoke. Everyone in this room saw me walking through these halls like a ghost, and no one asked why. I was grieving, alone, living in a house where I was called weak, dramatic, broken. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would pass. But it didn't pass, because Cynthia didn't want it to. She orchestrated it. She funded it. And when I finally spoke up, she tried to paint me as unstable, unreliable, the boy who cried trauma. I'm not crying. I'm not unstable. I'm telling the truth. There was silence. No one moved. No one dared to. Cynthia didn't cry this time. She didn't even flinch, because she knew it was over. The board recessed for deliberation. We waited in the hallway. Mason sat on the floor, back against the wall, knees tucked to his chest. Why'd you leak the photo? I asked. He didn't look at me. Didn't. My brother did. He found the cash. Asked questions. Why'd you let her talk you into it? Because I was angry. And she made it easy. He paused. You didn't deserve it. It wasn't an apology. But it was close. And maybe that was enough. When they called us back in, the board had a decision. Effective immediately, Mason Taylor is suspended for a full semester with mandatory counseling. Cynthia Barnes is barred from all volunteer and affiliate roles on campus indefinitely. Further legal investigation will be conducted regarding misuse of influence and financial manipulation involving minors. Cynthia didn't speak. She gathered her purse, adjusted her blouse, and walked out. Greg never showed up. He didn't call, didn't ask how the hearing went, didn't care. That night, I moved my things into a foster placement coordinated through the counselor's outreach contacts. Not ideal, but stable. For now, I had a bed, a desk, a house where no one asked me to disappear to be acceptable. And that was more than I'd had in a long time. You don't walk away from something like that unchanged. Even when you win, or whatever winning means in a situation like mine, you don't get to go back to who you were before. Because the truth doesn't just break what was done to you. It breaks who you were forced to become in the process. It's been 7 months since the hearing. Cynthia's gone. Not just from the school, from the town. After the investigation made the front page of the Redfield Journal, she quietly packed up and moved 2 states away. No announcement. No apology. No farewell tour. Greg never followed up. Not with me. Not with the school. I guess silence runs in his blood. He sent one email through the school counselor. I hope you find what you're looking for. I didn't respond. Because I already had. Mason never came back to Redfield Prep. Word was his parents transferred him to a school in Asheville. I don't know if he changed. I don't know if he cares. But I hope for his sake, he remembers that moment in the hallway. The one where he didn't try to explain. He just nodded. That nod meant more than he realized. Me? I live with the Tanners now. A foster placement, technically, but honestly, it feels like home. There's laughter in the kitchen. Books stacked on every surface. A dog that won't leave my side when I'm riding late into the night. They don't treat me like a project. They just see me. And they don't need me to be loud or brave or put together. They let me be quiet without being invisible. That's the difference. I still get jumpy sometimes. When someone walks behind me too fast. When I hear a quick pay notification sound on someone else's phone. Sometimes I still flinch when someone says my name too suddenly. But that's okay. That's not weakness. That's my body remembering what survival used to look like. I joined a school newspaper. Wrote a feature on emotional abuse and invisible manipulation. Didn't use my name. But people knew. And that's what mattered. It went viral, locally at least. Got picked up by a regional youth advocacy blog. Even got invited to speak at a teen mental health summit next month. I'm terrified, but I'll do it. Because maybe someone out there is sitting in their kitchen, trying to figure out why the people who say they love them also make them feel like they're slowly disappearing. And maybe, if they hear someone else say, "You're not broken. You were never too soft. You were just surviving something impossible," maybe that's enough to crack the silence. Cynthia used to say I was too soft to be loved. But what she didn't know is that softness isn't the opposite of strength. It's the foundation of it. It's how you stay human when everyone around you forgets to be. And now, I'm not soft. I'm steady. I'm grounded. I'm mine. Maeve, the tanner's youngest, asked me the other day what I want to be when I grow up. I told her I didn't know yet, but maybe something where I get to write, to tell stories, to make people feel less alone. She said I should write a book. Maybe I will. Maybe I already did. I don't have a perfect ending to this story. There's no bell, no slow fade into forgiveness. Just peace. Not loud, not dramatic. Just the kind that lets you sleep through the night without waiting for someone to knock on your door with a new lie. And that's more than I thought I'd get. That's everything. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it too.